Everyone said he was doing well. They didn't say it casually. They said it with certainty. With that nod people give when a life makes sense. Good job, decent money, clean apartment, no visible chaos. From the outside, everything had worked. And yet, every night just before sleep, there was this quiet moment where the silence felt heavier than it should have. Not sad, not dramatic, just wrong. He couldn't explain it. And that was the problem. He wasn't unhappy in the way people expect unhappiness to look. There were no breakdowns, no tears in the shower, no loud complaints. He woke up on time, answered emails, met deadlines, paid bills. Life moved forward smoothly. So why did it feel like he was standing still? Sometimes he would sit on the edge of his bed, phone in his hand, scrolling without really seeing anything. Not bored, just waiting for something, though he had no idea what that something was. He tried to reason with himself. Maybe I'm just tired. Maybe everyone feels this way. Maybe this is adulthood. That explanation worked for a while, until it didn't. Because tiredness fades after rest. This didn't. On paper, his life looked finished, completed, checked off. Education, done. Career, stable. Independence, achieved. There was nothing obvious left to chase, and somehow that scared him more than struggle ever had. When life was hard, there was direction. When life was uncertain, there was hope. But now, everything was predictable, and inside that predictability was a quiet emptiness he didn't know how to name. He remembered a time when he used to imagine the future, not specific things, just a feeling, a sense that one day, life would finally feel like it had started. Now that day had arrived, and nothing had happened. He didn't talk about this with anyone. How could he? What would he even say? Hey, my life is fine, but it doesn't feel like mine. That sounds ungrateful, dramatic, confusing. So he kept it to himself, like most people do. At work, he smiled at the right moments, joined conversations, laughed when expected. Inside, he felt like an observer, as if he was watching someone else live his life and doing a pretty good job at it. Sometimes in meetings, he'd catch himself drifting, not to fantasies, not to dreams, just blank, a mental pause, and then a sudden thought would appear. Is this it? Not angrily, not rebelliously, just curiously. He didn't hate his job. That made things worse, because hate would have been easier to explain. This was something else, a quiet disconnection, like wearing clothes that fit perfectly but don't feel like your style anymore. At night, the feeling got louder, not overwhelming, just present, a low hum beneath everything else. He tried distractions, Netflix, podcasts, music. Noise helped, until it didn't, because the moment the noise stopped, the feeling returned. Patient, unmoved. There were moments, small ones, when he felt something close to peace, walking alone in the evening, driving with no destination, standing at the kitchen window, watching city lights flicker on. Those moments didn't last, but they hinted at something he couldn't quite reach. He started noticing how often people talked about progress, promotions, upgrades, next steps, as if life was a staircase and the only rule was to keep climbing. But no one talked about where the staircase was going, or what happened when you reached a step and felt nothing. He wondered when exactly he stopped asking questions. Not big questions, simple ones. What do I actually enjoy? What feels meaningful to me? What part of this life did I choose, and what part just happened? He didn't remember deciding any of it. It just unfolded, one reasonable choice at a time. That's how most lives are built, not through passion, but through logic. He followed the sensible path, the safe one, the respectable one, and now he was here, wondering why it felt so quiet inside. There was no single moment that caused this feeling, no trauma, no loss. That also made it harder to justify, because pain without a story feels illegitimate. Some nights he imagined what it would be like to simply stop, not disappear, just pause, to step out of the role he was playing and ask, who am I without expectations, without productivity, without the need to make sense to others? The thought was both comforting and terrifying. He noticed how rarely he was fully present. Even during good moments, his mind was elsewhere, replaying conversations, planning the next task, living slightly ahead of himself, as if the present moment was something to endure on the way to something else. But what if there was no something else? What if this was the thing he had been rushing toward? That thought lingered longer than he liked. He didn't want more success, That surprised him. He wanted clarity, not answers, just a sense of alignment, a feeling that his life and his inner world were moving in the same direction. Instead, they felt parallel, close, but never touching. One evening, while washing dishes, he caught his reflection in the dark window. Nothing wrong, nothing unusual. And yet, he didn't recognize the person looking back, not because he had changed, but because he had stayed the same for too long. He realized something then, quietly, almost reluctantly. The problem wasn't that life had failed him, it hadn't. The problem was that he had never asked what he actually wanted from it. He had been living on default settings, inherited goals, borrowed definitions of success, and now that he had achieved them, there was nothing left to motivate him forward. This realization didn't fix anything. It didn't bring relief, but it did something else. It made the emptiness feel honest. For the first time, he stopped trying to escape the feeling. He didn't label it, didn't fight it. He just noticed it, sat with it, listened. It wasn't demanding. It wasn't urgent. It was simply asking for attention. That night, as he lay in bed, the familiar heaviness returned, but this time it felt different, less threatening, more informative, like a signal, not of failure, but of misalignment. Nothing in his life needed to collapse. Nothing dramatic had to happen, but something inside him needed to be acknowledged. He didn't know what the next step was, and for once, he didn't rush to figure it out. He let the question remain open.